Today I want to discuss UNANIM, which is also referred to as UNANIM Festo Operation Fortress, a codename for the German airborne assault against the Netherlands. It is important to note that the Netherlands was a neutral country, and this operation aimed to block access to this region, particularly Fortress Holland, which can be described as the territory south of Rotterdam in the area called Holland's Deep, then extending along the rivers up to approximately my geography is failing me here to the market. This operation would serve as a preliminary test of this strategy. We are going to examine it simply using Google Maps, without any elaborate visual effects. The region known as Fortress Holland contains many airfields. There are roughly 3 or 4 airports near the H, 2 located near Rotterdam, and 1 Schiphol next to Amsterdam. In addition, there are several other airports in this vicinity, all of which the Germans, especially the Luftwaffe, were concerned might be used by the RAF in any potential future conflict. Consequently, they intended to prevent Britain from accessing this area and possibly block Britain from dispatching troops through this route, thereby also threatening the Ruhr area as well as northern Germany. The Ruhr, of course, is a region of significant importance for the Germans because of its concentrated manufacturing facilities and substantial extraction of raw materials. As you may recall from my previous video, even after Germany seized control of the Netherlands and maintained its occupation of most of the country throughout the war until approximately 1944 and even into 1945 in some northern zones, the result was that, since this region was under German occupation, British and American forces were able to carry out direct attacks against Germany without needing to account for Dutch neutrality. Now, a component of the Dutch involvement included an air landing mission involving the Schiphol Division, which was made up of around 4,500 troops organized into 2 regiments, both of which were Fallschirmjäger units. Additionally, the 22nd Air Landing Division, which had about 12,000 soldiers, was heavily committed to this offensive. I certainly want to acknowledge that air landing operations did also occur in Belgium, particularly within the region near Maastricht, specifically between Maastricht and Liège, where several bridges were seized as illustrated here, including the Ghana Bridge, the Fauven Bridge, as well as the Well-Velvetel Bridge, or something along those lines, and additionally, the fort of Ibn Imail. Nevertheless, this subject will not be the focus of this particular operational discussion. The primary focus for the Germans concerning the air landing mission is to gain control of the bridge at the Mur at Merk, secure the bridge in Doré, and obtain the bridge in this designated area. Naturally, the map shown is a contemporary one, so several extra bridges are present, but this specific area in Rotterdam is crucial, as controlling it would allow the 18th Army, and more precisely the 9th Panzer Division, to travel through, cross the rivers, and proceed directly towards the capital, Den Haag. In addition to that aim, the secondary goal was to capture Den Haag, seize authority over the Dutch government, and also, essentially, detain the Dutch royal family. Achieving this required 3 separate air landing actions in the vicinity of Den Haag. One to the south, which has since become developed, one to the east, now also more urbanized, and one to the northeast, likewise more built up today. And for reference, as a German, this word is supposedly hard for me to pronounce, but this location is named Schengen, and I do in fact know how to say its name. Thank you for noting that. I should mention immediately that this particular operation at Den Haag was a complete disaster for the German forces and resulted in an outright defeat. The bridge missions around Rotterdam, on the other hand, were successful, though they were in a very precarious position by the 3rd day. It was at that point that German leadership opted to bomb Rotterdam, which I will elaborate on a little later. The majority of aircraft attacking the Netherlands originated from northern Germany. By aircraft here, I am referring specifically to the bomber units. These planes flew first over the North Sea, then traveled parallel to the coastline, simulating an attack on England, so that Dutch forces would be unaware of their actual intent, before turning southward and then, flying at low level, striking all of the airfields situated within the Fortress Holland region. As they carry out this task, They are noticed and even fired upon by a Dutch naval vessel which sees several German aircraft laying mines in this sector. Nevertheless, the Germans manage to catch several of the airports off guard and succeed in destroying a number of them, though not all. Consequently, limited aerial operations continue in these days in May around Den and during the 3 distinct air landing efforts, which primarily result from intelligence shortcomings. One of these, let me double-check my notes, the Okenborg landing occurs quite close to a garrison of Dutch grenadier. This means the Germans immediately face resistance and end up pinned down near their drop zone. At Volborg, while the arriving planes are able to touch down, the underlying problem is that the airfield isn't adequately prepared for large aircraft. The ground remains soft, having not been reinforced, and thus many planes merely sink into the mud and are immobilized. This causes severe congestion on the runway, stopping any further reinforcements from landing there. Meanwhile, the effort at Ypenborg fails because an earlier Luftwaffe attack does not remove the Dutch anti-aircraft batteries. So, when the German Ju-52s begin to land, they come under direct fire from Dutch flak, leading to heavy losses. Subsequently, substantial quantities of supplies and reserves cannot reach these 3 locations by air, forcing the Germans, particularly near Oken, to land at the beach instead. Although this maneuver permits German forces to establish a presence on shore, many of the aircraft are nonetheless lost. A significant portion of the Ju-52s deployed in this sector are destroyed on the ground or rendered unusable after landing, never flying again. Focusing on Rotterdam, as well as the Merk and notably the Door bridges, these are secured by German troops fairly quickly. Though fierce fighting breaks out in Dore and German positions there grow increasingly vulnerable until the arrival of reinforcements from the 9th Panzer Division. Notably, the operations in Rotterdam are triple-pronged. Valhar, which served as an airfield at that time, is also involved. That was the principal airfield the Germans relied upon to bring in reinforcements. They also flew in approximately 100 paratroopers at Baden North, specifically at the stadium, and then these troops hurried south to seize control of the bridges crossing the Northern Island. Additionally, a few paratroopers were placed onto the new mass using seaplanes to secure positions there. However, the situation became increasingly unstable as time progressed, largely because the strategy to overthrow the Dutch government did not succeed. Consequently, the Dutch put up much stronger resistance than the Germans had anticipated, and with Dutch reinforcements arriving, the airfield at Valhar was rendered inoperable due to sustained artillery bombardment. This meant that bringing in further reinforcements via aircraft was no longer possible. Ultimately, reasons for this included both the inability of the 9th Panzer to advance with sufficient speed and the presence of 2 defensive lines stretching from roughly this point near Amsterdam down to the southern region, which hindered the pace of the German advance. Near Breda, or just south of Breda, the Luftwaffe was summoned urgently because a French column managed to reach this area and was subsequently attacked by German aircraft, which compelled them to pull back, a development that might have completely disrupted the operation had the French managed to dig in around this position. By the 3rd or 4th day, the Germans found themselves in a state of near panic, realizing that unless some significant change occurred, the Dutch would not surrender, be it the city of Rotterdam or the entire country, leading them to see no viable alternative but to carry out a bombing of Rotterdam to send a clear message. This decision was also influenced by increased German activity by May 13. Of course, now where is my knowledge of geography taking me? I lack a degree in geography, so I am unsure why I said that. Where exactly is Sedan located? Which is the favored German route into France? Why can't I find Sedan? I should instinctively know this. Regardless, I will use a shortcut to pinpoint Sedan. Now I've found Sedan. Here lies the line of fortifications. Their objective is to capture Sedan, which requires a substantial number of Luftwaffe resources, notably the Stukas then being used in the northern sector. As a result, anxiety grew among the German command, and so, the decision was made to bomb Rotterdam. The bombing ultimately took place, but only roughly half of the aircraft initially dispatched participated because the Luftwaffe failed to abort the mission in time. This outlines the reasoning behind these events and highlights how the bold, high-stakes strategy nearly didn't succeed, clarifying why the Luftwaffe carried out one of the numerous terror bombings in 1940. Are there any questions? Silence.